So I would like to go ahead and get started for our session on curriculum dilemma. I am Emily Warford, and I am part of Group 1. And we also have Jen Mack and Michael Riley Marlette and Catrice Louder. So to start, I'm going to read a summary of our dilemma. And I did this in first person to kind of make it more interesting. It is, must I teach phonics? I have been teaching at Woodrow Wilson Elementary School in a rural district in North Texas for 15 years. I love teaching my students how to read through a whole language approach, allowing them to explore books and learning more about words through immersion in reading material. My new principal is a strong proponent of teaching reading through a phonics approach. He is requiring all teachers at my school to teach phonics next year. I do not agree with my principal, and neither do several of my colleagues. I don't like the phonics approach, and I don't even know much about how to teach phonics anyway. I don't want to change everything that I've been doing for the past 15 years just because I have a new principal. This is an unjust attack on my professional expertise. This is a problem that we must all deliberate. So in our deliberation, Jen, go ahead. Oh, you're muted, Jen. Jen, you're muted.
It's because I cleared my throat earlier and then LOL, sorry. All right, so the identification of the questions I'm about to explain them to you. And while we won't specifically answer these questions one by one or directly, each question will be addressed and answered throughout our deliberations. One of the questions we have is, in what way would switching to phonics enhance the learning of students? In what way would switching to phonics impede the learning of students? In what way could the principal offer support to teachers intimidated by the implementation of phonics? And then the motivation, what's the motivation behind enforcing the new teaching approach, especially since test scores at our school are currently good? And then I also would dare to say, add another one about what the teacher morale, how that could impact the implementation and the efficacy of teaching phonics as well, especially considering the large number of teachers that are not interested in making this transition, especially the teachers that are gifted in teaching and are good. And we just wanted to go ahead and introduce the fifth commonplace here at the start, which is curriculum making, and just acknowledging that it's about action, and deliberators must aim to be educators who intend to do something with and for their students. So as we continue with our deliberation, we'll make sure that each of us has an assigned role that we'll be playing, and that we're at the heart of it all, we're just making sure that we are working together as a cohesive group for the betterment of the students in the community that we serve.
Okay, thanks, Jen. So we are going to now go to our common places and explain how each of these common places are viewing this particular dilemma. So the first common place is teachers. And with that, in our textbook, we see that teachers must be consulted because they know the realities inside their classrooms. They know the way their fellow teachers think, and they recognize that no curriculum can succeed if they do not support it. So with our case, first, as teachers at Woodrow Wilson Elementary School, we need to understand about the decisions made by the principal for this school-wide implementation of phonics. Is this a county or a state standard that we must follow? What database research is behind the decision made by my principal? We need to know that. The next thing, as teachers, we have not taught a phonics curriculum here at this school. We need time to explore different phonics programs and talk to other teachers who have used phonics programs to learn about their experiences. We don't want to go into this without having discussed this with professionals about this. As teachers, we have little experience with phonics, so we would like to have professional learning provided to us to learn more about teaching phonics. As teachers, We have used whole language approach for many years. We would like to present our own historical classroom data to show the effectiveness of using the whole language approach in the past. As teachers, we want to be treated as professionals who understand what works for our students. We have had the opportunity in the past to use whole language, and we would like to think that our principal would give us the opportunity to show our side of the story. We think it works for our students. We would like to have input on decisions made for our students in regards to this reading curriculum. Okay, next we have Catrice with the learners commonplace.
Yes, I am Catrice, and I'm going to start with a quote from our text reading. Due to complexity of human nature, curriculum should impact learners in every aspect of their character, including its moral, intellectual, physical, civic, and spiritual dimensions. There were a couple of questions that just came up before I start with the commonplace. In what ways could phonics help students in their pathways to learning and being able to navigate the world efficiently? In what ways could teaching phonics inhibit individual expression of culture, belief, or language? Could teaching phonics prioritize one culture over another or mark one as superior to another? So in representing in the commonplace for learners, I want to start off with saying that this representative for the learners would want to be sure to keep the interests of the learners in mind, but also look beyond the learners as it relates to other schools in this small district and surrounding district areas. So must I teach phonics is the dilemma. Well, when it comes to teaching phonics, most would think of it being taught to the lower elementary students. But what would be the pros and the cons for the request of a new principal wanting every teacher in the school, kindergarten or K through 5, to teach phonics to their students? Initially, Mr. Battle thinks that it could influence increasing test scores. There are some questions and concerns that need to be asked by the commonplace for learners for deliberation with the other commonplaces. So the new principal should look at Woodrow Wilson Elementary's recent data scores from the previous year. He should also look at data scores from surrounding elementary schools as well as surrounding district schools, because this is a small rural district as it relates to phonics. During a faculty meeting, I think it would be a good suggestion for the principal and staff to be able to analyze how every teacher who teaches phonics, how this would benefit the students. Some questions that will come with that would be, where is or are the biggest needs for teaching phonics? Can we start there as it relates to the grade levels? Can data be used to look at student scores from the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, to the end of the year, from the last year, or even a few years back, in order to see if phonics may have an impact on their growth? With the students in mind, are there plans to evaluate specialized phonics programs? So will there be a selection of phonics programs, and will teachers be able to evaluate these programs? For the student, with the students in mind, if a decision was made to have every teacher teach phonics, how much time will be spent on these phonics lesson sessions for each grade level? So would one grade level spend 30 minutes while another grade level only needs like 5 or 10 minutes? So that would be a question at hand as well. With research, which research-based activities could be used to make learning phonics more interesting for the students, since one of the teachers feels that it will cause students to lose interest? Another point that came up is, there cannot be an assumption of anything. So there should be an implementation to survey students, parents, teachers, and even some of the community in an effort to see how teaching phonics to all kindergarten through 5th grade students will affect students' interests or what the community feels about it. Here are some questions or some points that relate to what I just said. There are grade levels where phonics instruction should not be overly focused so that there is not a loss of interest when it comes to reading. You know, there may be, once again, lower grade levels where the focus might be more so than the higher grades. Once again, there's a concern about students losing interest in reading, and we don't want that to happen. Another point is get input from teachers that are teaching phonics to their students. Are they teaching only to a small group of struggling students, or are they teaching to the class as a whole? And another point is, how do teachers who are not teaching phonics feel about teaching every student? One or two teachers' personal opinions about teaching phonics cannot dictate what may be a beneficial implementation for a vast amount of students. A question is, can the implementation of teaching phonics to the K through 5 grade levels enable students to become better writers and or speakers? So will it really benefit them in some kind of way? And of course, you know, research and evaluations and things like that, would some of these students that might benefit, would they be ESOL, disabled students, speech students, or students that are in the RTI or MTS process? And those would be some of the points that we would deliberate on as far as it comes to the concerns of the students. And now we will move on to the content.
We're moving on to the commonplace of the subject matter.
Okay,
So-
subject matter.
Thank you, Catrice. The subject matter specialist must recognize that their knowledge is almost always theoretic, meaning that it must be translated into a usable form before it becomes a curriculum. So in this case, the subject matter would be English language arts and phonics in particular. Phonics is essential to learning, especially for younger students in grades like kindergarten and first. Some students also who are struggling, such as English language learners or students who are behind in reading and placed in RTI. If a student has already mastered phonological awareness, then I understand a different approach, moving on, or there being no need. However, if a student is struggling, phonics is full of foundational skills that should be taught. Systematic phonics instruction would be the best approach in this case. It is easier for a student to memorize 44 sounds of the English language to put into practice through encoding and decoding instead of memorizing thousands of words through the whole language approach. Some may argue, well, what about irregular words? To me, it's better and easier to memorize a few along with 44 sounds than to memorize every word you ever read through the whole language approach. Some students, and research shows about 40%, pick up on sounds anyhow eventually. I understand that at Woodrow Wilson Elementary, the teachers have taught the whole language approach for a long time and seemingly have had no issues and good data. Yet this doesn't mean that whole language is the best and only approach. Education is not a one-size-fits-all, and there is beauty in differentiation. For the students at this school who have mastered whole language approach or are past that threshold of age and are fluent readers, I would not go back and teach phonics as it could lead to confusion. However, for those with deficits, they may need these foundational skills to be laid to become more confident, accurate, fluent readers and writers. Reading transcends all content areas to word problems in math, reading instructions in science, passages and facts in social studies, and so on. So being a fluent reader is so important for their education from the start to finish. And now we're going to move to Jen to talk about the context.
All right, thank you. So the context, just as a reminder, is experience within the environment where curriculum problems exist is essential for all members of the deliberation team. And this is someone who knows the history of an individual school or community, or well connected to political and economic leadership. So I like all the points that my teammates have brought up so far from both the teacher perspective, the student perspective, or the learner perspective, as well as what Michael Riley said about the subject matter. And so what we also need to consider, of course, is the community that we're serving. So while it's understandable that the staff at the school has established an effective course of action for their current students, as is evident by the test scores, I think it's important to look at the bigger picture of the impact on our community as a whole. While that may seem a little silly, our school is located, as we've talked about, in a small rural district in northern Texas. For the context of our school community, we have a lot of excellent veteran teachers on staff, some of whom would rather venture elsewhere than take on the challenge of learning a new curriculum, which is also important to take into consideration. The current school scores are good, showing that our community of students is being served. But what about when they move, or if they move to another school? And right now, if a new child moves into our school, perhaps they've only been taught phonemic awareness. And if that's the case, they'll most likely be able to pick up on the whole language approach because they know how to decode words. But if we take a student from our school and place them elsewhere, will they continue to have the same success regardless of the curriculum being taught? Other questions that I would also like to consider would include asking if there is a district or county-wide initiative for this whole language versus phonics approach. And then the last thing is just, again, wrapping up into the curriculum making. So now that we've all deliberated our point of views and perspectives, talking about what our solution could be. So the establishment of the criteria and grounds that will define possible answers and solutions, that's the part we're entering in. So that kind of goes hand in hand with the final decision, the establishment of the criteria and grounds and the final decision. So first, we think that the principal needs to understand where these teachers are coming from. It's absolutely easy to say things need to change, but it's harder to get buy-in from teachers who have labored for years with the school community, especially one in a small town where it's not just they know the families. It's not just the kids. They know the families that go to church with these people. They see them on the street, see them in the stores. And so they have labored and dedicated their lives to these students and their success. So acknowledging the hard work and success of the teachers is imperative. After all, the principal is new to the school and the area, and it appears he's coming in and wants to make immediate changes solely based on his own personal experiences and knowledge. But much like the teachers need to earn the trust of their students, Mr. Battle should likewise make the effort to build that relationship of trust with his employees. Coming in and altering everything at once would likely trigger tension, especially given the knowledge that several teachers have already vocalized considering walking away. That grammar is weird. He should be willing to meet with the teachers to discuss their side of things respectfully and with an open mind. Although he is the principal and ultimately he is the decision maker, if he makes several major changes from the start, he will have a long road ahead of him and risk the long-term success of his school if he ostracizes his educators.
So coming from a solution from the teacher standpoint, I believe the teacher or the teachers, because we're learning about one teacher in the passage, but it states that there are several that are upset. I think they need to calm down a little bit before they rush to his office and truly gather their thoughts before approaching the principal, so that she may do so in the most professional manner possible. If it is several who feel the same way, maybe they should all sit down together with the principal so it doesn't seem that one is speaking for all. I know my principal personally likes to hear from all of us and doesn't want us to send someone in to speak on our behalf. I have always heard if you come with a problem, that's fine, but be ready to offer a solution as well. The teachers seem to be very passionate about the whole language approach. Obviously, it has been working. However, that doesn't mean that things can't or shouldn't change, and it doesn't mean that change couldn't be a good thing. In education, things change all of the time. It's very fluid. It's actually amazing that they've done the same thing for 15 years. As an educator, we should be ready to make those changes that, one, benefit our students the most, and two, that the state requires of us. Also, it specifically states that the teacher has never taught and doesn't know how to teach phonics. Maybe her frustration truly lies there. She doesn't know how and the ins and outs of it. Therefore, she is defensive about the whole language approach because that is what is comfortable to her. If she would give phonics a chance, she may actually fall in love with it too. Then there lies the attack that she feels on her professionalism. While it may seem this way, no one is saying that what she has done is wrong. Mr. Battle is just passionate about phonics and wanting to implement something new. I believe how she handles this dilemma moving forward will speak volumes about her professionalism and his as well. The best solution would be one where they are able to sit down and calmly and respectfully express both sides and listen to the reasoning behind each other's approach and opinion and come to a happy medium decision. So, as our group discussed previously, our final decision and rationale would be that phonics is too essential not to teach it, especially to our struggling students who may be missing certain sounds, such as English language learners and RTI students, as mentioned before. Our younger students, such as kinder and first, who are just now grasping the concept of letters and sounds. We believe a slow implementation would be the best way to start. To start offering phonics and interventions to struggling learners and beginning with some phonics curriculum or time starting in kindergarten. Then the next year, kinder and first, and so on as it is needed. Honestly, past first or second grade, usually phonics is only used for those who are below average learners. Under the slow implementation, students would learn the 44 sounds to produce and sound out most words instead of having to memorize thousands of whole words. Professional development is also a must, and it has to be offered to make these teachers feel more confident in what they are teaching their students. No teacher wants to teach something that they don't know themselves, and any educator would want to be sure that they are teaching it the right way. The teachers should realize it is always best to have many things in your toolbox. A new phonics resource is just another one to pull from. The slow implementation and the trainings on phonics are just going to add to that. You never know when you may have a student who just learns a different way and truly needs the phonological awareness gaps to be met so that they can be successful. No one is saying that what they have done in the past is wrong, but moving forward, let's have one more thing in our toolbox to pull from. We all want one thing, and that is for our students to all be successful, and sometimes that means differentiation. Some may learn well through whole language, while others need phonological gaps to be met to be confident readers and spellers. That is our deliberation and our argument.
All right, welcome back to our curriculum dilemma presentations. Before we get started with Group 2's presentation, we're going to have just a recap of where we left off last week. And Michael Riley's going to read our final decision and our rationale, and then we'll have just a little bit of time for Group 2 to give us feedback. Okay, Michael Riley?
Okay, so our final decision and rationale on Must I Teach Phonics is that phonics is too essential not to teach it, especially to our struggling students, English language learners, or students that may be just missing certain sounds. Especially also younger students, pre-K, kinder, and first, who are just now grasping the concept of letters and letter sounds. We believe that a slow implementation would be best, starting off by offering phonics and interventions to struggling learners and beginning with some phonics instruction and curriculum time in kindergarten. Then the next year, kinder and first, and so on as needed. Honestly, past first and second grade, usually phonics is only used for those who are considered below average learners. Under the slow implementation process, students would learn 44 sounds to produce or sound out most words in the English language instead of having to memorize thousands of whole words under the whole language approach. Professional development must also be offered to make teachers feel more confident in what they are teaching their students. No teacher wants to teach something they don't know themselves, and any educator would want to be sure that they are teaching it the correct way. The teachers should realize that it's always best to have many things in your toolbox. A new phonics resource to pull from, the slow implementation, and the trainings on phonics are just going to add to that. You never know when you may have a student who learns a different way or truly needs those phonological awareness gaps to be met. No one is saying that what they have done in the past is wrong, but moving forward, let's have more in our toolbox to pull from. We all want one thing, and that's our students to be successful. And sometimes that means differentiation. Some may learn well through whole language, while others need their phonological awareness gaps to be met to be more confident readers and spellers.
Thank you, Michael Riley.
Yes,
Okay, and
ma'am.
we'll just give group 2 a time just to give some feedback.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. I definitely agree that phonics is way too important not to implement. And I do agree with the slow start with the building each year. So I think that was a great decision for that.
Hello, this is Ross here, and I agree as well. And I was just curious, what do you feel like you would do for the struggling learners beyond the second grade? Those older elementary kids you got.
So I think that that's where it would follow them into their intervention times, like RTI or MTSS time. So they would have those deficits met, in a smaller group, separate class thing.
And I can mention that as well. I do teach at the middle school level. So I am the MTSS coordinator for our school. And we do it in a variety of ways. We have a pull-out ESOL class during connection times. And the ESOL teacher covers phonics skills and reading skills during that time. We also have a remedial reading teacher that also covers phonics skills during her time as well. And those are interventions that we use when kids are placed in special ed. We also have connection classes that just get down to the basic of phonics. We use something called the Wilson program. And it is a research-based reading program that really does heavily teach phonics as well. So they do get it in the middle school as well.
And there was a deliberating question asked for the learners of which research-based activities could be used to make learning phonics more interesting for the students. And that would include the upper grades as well. And just making sure that the phonics is not overly focused in those grade levels.
Okay, any more feedback?
Sounds great. Thank y'all.
Okay, Nikki, did you have something to say?
I think Nikki may be breaking up a little bit.
Or muted maybe.
You want to type in the chat?
Oh, this is Jackson. So your final decision as a whole was to go ahead and implement the phonics?
Yes.
Everybody agreed? Okay.
A slow progression, not totally going full force phonics the first years, just slowly implementing it. Okay, if
Nikki,
you are
good
ready
to go ahead.
Okay, we'll move on to group 2's presentation. I'm going to turn this back over to speaker mode. Okay.
All right. I'll go ahead and introduce. So I am Amy Phillips, and we have Nikki Presley, who I think may be having connection issues, And then we've got Jackson and Ross. Ross is with us by iPhone. So our dilemma is very, very different from yours. I will do the summary, and then we've got Jackson and Ross. Did y'all get the printout?
Yes, I did, Nikki. I'll go after you and I can do the next section.
Sounds great. Ross, did you get it as
Sure.
well?
I took some notes from that first time,
Perfect.
and see, I'll pick up after that.
Okay, sounds great.
All right. Thank you.
All right, I will go ahead and do the summary. So our dilemma is called, should I involve the principal or not? Or should I meet with the principal? Should I tell the principal? I can't remember the exact question. Do either of y'all have that pulled up right in front of you? I'm at school and my book is at home.
Yes, I do have that.
Okay, what's it called?
It's should I talk to the principal or not? Curriculum
That's it.
dilemma number 2, and that is
There you
on page 287.
Perfect. Should I talk to the principal or not? So I'll just read the summary very quickly. It says, you are a 3rd grade teacher from Whispering Pines Elementary School in Dallas, Texas. In the book, it actually said Seattle, Washington, but we're going to use Dallas, Texas, and have been a teacher there for 3 years. Your school is diverse with students from very different socioeconomic backgrounds. Out of the 650 students, about half of them live in $1 million homes. So 650 students, roughly half of them live in $1 million homes. The other half of the student body is on free and reduced lunch. So there's a great divide in the socioeconomic status of the students. Of these students, many do not have parent support, technology in the home, and are not likely to graduate high school. So you have just a vast difference in the groups of students who are available to be taught at your school. 2 other teachers in the same grade level always get the students who come from the higher socioeconomic class. You don't mind working with struggling learners, but wonder why you never get to teach students from wealthier backgrounds. You think all students would benefit from being in a mixed classroom. The 2 teachers in the scenario are very good friends with the principal. So these 2 teachers who always get the highest of the high kids are great friends with the principal. They get together after school. They've been working together for almost 15 years. They play golf together. They attend church together. Their children play on the same high school teams, etc. Parents of these wealthier households, you know for sure, have requested you to be the teacher, but you are not awarded that opportunity. So your test scores are always lower than the scores of your peers, and you feel that you are being compared and looked like you are not being an effective teacher. You love teaching and love your school, but you are angry and are contemplating requesting a transfer. Should you talk to the principal or not? All right, now we'll get into Ross's section, which is consideration of relevant commonplaces.
Hello, everyone. So the relevant commonplaces to discuss are.
I think it was. I'm so sorry, Ross. Was Jackson
That's
going to
okay.
go next? Jackson, I'm so sorry.
That's
Jackson,
fine.
That's okay.
Sure.
I'll take it, Ross, if you want me to, because I have
Sure.
it pulled up in front of me. Okay, cool.
Sure, sounds good.
So the relevant commonplaces is what or who mixed about ability classes affect. As far as the teachers as a commonplace, all teachers will have to adapt to a variety of learners in their classrooms. The learners, all students, would now be exposed to students with different backgrounds and opinions, because remember, it's very mixed race so far. We have a lot of different socioeconomic backgrounds, a lot of different classes, but now they're all in the same classroom because it's mixed ability groups. Subject matter. There would not be a dramatic change in subject matter or content. Even though the students have different abilities, they still would be learning the same content. It would just be differentiated based off of what their abilities are. The context. There would be a change in context with the students in the classroom and how you would deliver instruction. So before, where you had all the gifted students in one classroom, you probably could teach at a higher level. Now you have a mixed ability classroom with high and low students where the teacher will have to adapt. And also, now you have people of different backgrounds. They're coming from different economic standpoints. So now you would have to make the content relevant to appeal to every student in your classroom. And then as far as curriculum making, there will be a slight change in curriculum based off of the diversity in the classroom, because now you want to make it culturally relevant to every student in the classroom and not teach to a specific person. So those were our relevant commonplaces. So it touched on every single one, just not subject matter, because you would still be teaching the same content regardless of who the teacher was or the classroom. And now Ross is going to hit us with the questions that we think that they should think about before they actually go to the principal and address their concerns.
All right, so Ross here. So identification of some of the questions would be, what are you going to do? So obviously, you know, in this situation, someone must be told in order to address the situation. So the teacher might fear some kind of serious repercussions from the principal. So it's possible they might need to, you know, like, what are they going to do? Do they need to go to someone like Paige? Is that a safer way to go? Hopefully they can give them some advice on that. You're going to think about what happens if you do speak up. So, do you speak to the other teachers? Do you, you know, not do anything? Right? If you don't speak up, what would happen if you don't address that? What kind of serious consequences if you feel this ethical issue goes on and you know about it, that's not enforced? So those are just the basics. And if there are some other ones there on the document, then please go ahead with those as well.
Okay,
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so some other questions that we came up with as we were discussing this dilemma. Is there a true discrepancy between the classes, or is this just the teacher's perception? Because a lot of times, you know, your perception may be one thing, and reality might be a little bit different. So is there a true discrepancy there? How are the students grouped? Is the teacher that is, you know, discussing the scenario, are they gifted certified? Do the other teachers have a different skill set that maybe the principal looked at when giving them these classes? Or on the other hand, does this teacher have a different skill set where she works well with those students that struggle, and that's why they the principal has decided that? What background does the teacher have? And then if the teacher does decide to go to the principal, what is the outcome that that teacher wants? Like, is it that they just want a chance to get the higher level kids every now and then, or do they want a true mixed ability classroom? Because those are two very different questions. So by looking at all of those and by answering those questions, we would have a better idea of determining or being able to determine whether the teacher has grounds to take this problem further. So we discussed as a team that usually we would kind of want the teacher to go to her colleagues first before going to the principal, but this might not be a case where she needs to go to the colleagues first. This is a problem that could turn into another problem. We talked a little bit about it may not be the best approach, especially since those two teachers are very good friends with the principal. We did not want any upset feelings or anybody being because eventually, I mean, they have to continue working with these two teachers. So we don't want the teachers to take offense or to see this as a confrontation. So we said that there was definitely a problem that needed to be addressed by the principal. But before the teacher goes to the principal. The teacher needs to have a plan. I am currently in an instructional specialist role, and I'm able to kind of see both worlds. And one of the things that I hear a lot from administration is that teachers do come with problems, but they don't always come with solutions to the problems, and that helps a little bit. So the teacher must come up with a plan and possible solution before speaking to the principal. So we talked about a couple of things. We talked about some data. The teacher needs to provide data to solidify her concerns. We also discussed doing some research. Could she research other schools that might have a mixed ability model and the benefits of having that, so that she could share that with the principal? We also talked a little bit about how could this affect the learners? Could a mixed ability group positively affect the students and the teachers in the building? So we looked at all of that when we were trying to come up with a rationale.
All right. So our final decision, as far as should we talk to the principal or not, we decided yes, this is something that if it is bothering you to the point that it's affecting you and making you think whether or not you need to transfer, we definitely need to have a discussion with the principal. But we do need to come armed with that information before we go, just to see what the data looks like. And we wanted to point out, none of us thought, like, immediately we were like, well, I mean, you can grow lower kids way more than you can, the higher kids a lot of times. So maybe she should just be thankful that she's able to grow these kids. But it's the fact of it's not a level playing field. So we feel like this is a scenario where it's necessary to talk to the principal.
Thank you guys very much. I'm going to turn it back over to a gallery view. And so group one, if you would like to give feedback to this dilemma. I think, first of all, I'd like to say that I would be definitely, I agree with you. The teacher does need to go to the principal and voice her concerns, especially if she has such hard feelings that it's making her want to transfer, or having hard feelings against her colleagues. That doesn't really help her as a professional to grow and work with the people at her school. I guess my question about the whole scenario is, what is the separation of the socioeconomics doing to the culture?
What is it doing to the what? And on my screen, you broke up.
Oh, the culture of the school. So having the higher socioeconomic kids separated from the lower socioeconomic kids, is it totally just a separation due to socioeconomics, or is it ability?
We actually there was no indication of why it was that way. That's why we said we need to make sure it's not just this teacher's perception.
Sure.
Also, nowhere did it say that all of these kids were gifted and all of these kids were low. We're just going off of it said that most of them would not graduate. So we're just basing it off of that.
Just making that
general consensus from all of us, and Jackson, Ross, and Nikki can attest that we did talk about this, is that having a mixed ability group often gives the lower kids models to aim for. And it gives them something to look up and see where they could be. So it gives them somewhere to grow. Without those models in the classroom, we feel like the teacher really does not have a fair playing field. So that was our thoughts on that.
And I think too, at the same time, giving those higher level kids the opportunity to work with all kinds of people, puts them in a more real perspective of what the real world is like. Because we're not always going to work with people that are like us in our educational backgrounds or socioeconomic backgrounds. And it just gives those kids, a more real world view of what, you know, it's going to be like when they do leave that environment. Anybody else?
I was gonna say also that I definitely thought that the teacher should go to the principal, because just in talking to other teachers, sometimes things can get turned around, added, misconstrued, and, telling other teachers, and before you know it, it's something said that you really didn't say, added, and also just the benefit that the students in cooperative learning and having discussions, classroom discussions, that's a wonderful way for them to also learn from each other, and explore both worlds.
I'd also be interested to see, I know y'all wouldn't be able to provide this because it's not in the dilemma, but the reasoning behind the dropout rate. Is it because they're underperforming academically, or is it because they have to help support their families? And so considering the economic gap. And so it's like, is it, because it's also, I think of my own classroom and how I rely heavily on the parents that are a little more affluent to help provide resources for my students. So I don't always have to provide. So it's like, what learning opportunities or extra activities are these other kids missing out on that because of the economic divide even? So that, I mean, y'all can't answer that, but that's just like my own questioning. Is there a solution that you guys talked about? Like, what solution would you take to the principal of, like, if you're going to the principal and like seeking more information, is there like because like, oh my gosh, I can't remember who said, but someone said they go to the principal with no solutions, with just complaints. But did y'all talk about a potential like solution to present to him for this issue?
Nikki, do you want to take it? That's where you were talking
Yeah,
about.
sure.
Yeah.
So we were leaning towards the mixed ability group. So the solution would be changing the way that they are scheduling students so that there would be a mixed ability. And so in order to do that, like we said earlier, like that teacher would need to come in with some knowledge on mixed ability grouping, some ideas on how that would look, because it would definitely be a change in the way that they currently do business. And so I think going on that, and a lot of times when teachers are coming to address things with the principal, it's all about their approach. And so if they approach it in a way that this could help our learners. How could this help our learners achieve? She was saying that her kids and their test scores are always the lowest. Well, what can we do to fix that? Mixed ability grouping could fix that, because then now they are working with middle and high learners that are going to help, like Amy said, will help push them.
Very nice.
I didn't even think about what Jen just brought up, and this is something that our group didn't discuss, but that's a huge point, is the resources that are brought to your classroom by the parents of the students. Just think of like classroom parties, which, I mean, I teach at the elementary level, so we count on parents to provide all of that. Just the fact that the parties would look and feel so different for your class versus the higher economic, it's not fair for anybody, really. It's not fair for the higher kids to think that that's real life, first of all. And it's not fair for the lower kids to never have any of that experience either. So that's another reason that I definitely think needs to be added to, yes, talk to the principal.
And I also think about kids and their self-esteem. And if kids know every year that they are in a lower performing class, even in a third grade classroom, they're going to know that. And so that can really lower their self-esteem and make them feel like they can't do. And so this could change the whole mindset as well.
When my principal came in about 6 years ago, the current principal, we had a model at our middle school where we had, for each grade level, we had 2 gifted teams, and all they had were gifted kids. And she did not like that at all, because it put the gifted kids on one hall. So each grade level had a hall that was just gifted kids. So what she did to kind of fix that a little bit, each gifted team now has either an ESOL segment or a co-taught segment. And then the kids that are in the ESOL segment, so each teacher has 4 segments a day. So in the gifted, they would have 3 segments or 3 classes that are gifted or gifted blended. And then 1 segment on one team would have ESOL. And it's an ESOL blended class. But out of that ESOL blended class, those kids that are in that ESOL blended class are then, somewhat blended into other classes on that team that are gifted. So it just kind of takes away that, we have this gifted hall. We don't have a gifted hall anymore. We have gifted blended classes that have either ESOL or co-taught blended with them. And it's been refreshing to me to see that. And, I just kind of like it.
Oh, Jen, I did want to comment. I know you asked about why did it say why they're not likely to graduate. And I think 2 of the main points that it made was they do not have parent support at home, probably because their parents are working all the time, and they do not have technology in the home. So those are 2 major factors that socioeconomic status would kind of, change. Maybe these people are getting tutoring, because it never said that the kids in the other class are gifted. It just said they had higher test scores. So maybe they came in at a higher ability, and then the lower class, they're always going to have lower test scores. They're trying to catch up. They're playing catch up. So I think those were 2 major points that it made, saying that they don't have support at home and they don't have technology. So they don't have the resources that it takes to be a higher achiever, essentially, than what happens in the classroom.
Right. And that makes sense. It also makes me think of the socioeconomic differences of I think Amy said something about it's not fair to either of the groups to think that this is only how it is. Because if you look at the trajectory, we're trying to prepare these children for their entire lives, right? And then to give them the opportunity to interact with people who are different than them, and versus instilling this sense of elitism of our parties are better, I wear better clothes, and that's everyone over here. And then that trajectory in that school, that's assuming that's elementary grades, it's 6 years of these ideas being instilled in these children. What sort of divide are you creating? What sort of community are you then creating outside of the school? Also not giving parents the opportunity to interact and potentially help family. I mean, I don't know, having the angel trees at Christmas or whatever. And you're just, it's not just impacting the school, but when you take a step back and which is the, when with the dilemmas, it's the context. I think when you look at the context of the implications of what it could mean at to the community as a whole as well, which of course makes this seem so much more heavier of a topic when you think about it in that grand of a scale. But genuinely, those are the choices that are being made and the potential negative impacts as well. So good job.
Like Amy said, it's not fair to either. And you were saying, the elitism and stuff, but then also with the not graduating, if they think that this is all there is, and I'm always in this class and what's to keep them from dropping out, giving up? Eventually, they're just down on themselves and they have nobody there, the teachers, but no peers pushing them to do better.
Well, the teacher's about ready to transfer because she's over it too. So
exactly.
Oh, goodness. Well, it seems like we have a lot of dilemmas on hand that we can definitely connect with here, and hopefully these scenarios are going to help us be better educators as well. So, any last thoughts before we head out? No. Okay.
Thank you for recording for us, Emily.
You're welcome.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all for meeting again.
Coming back, and Hope y'all all have a great afternoon and get all those papers written. Yay.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Have a
you.
good one.
Bye bye.